For me, listening to a compressor, it is like a symphony. And you think this is fast. In a real world, compressors are faster. This is a reciprocating compressor with a piston. But there are many types of compressors. Rotary, screw, many technology advances, hydromagnetic lubrication. There's many ways. Today I want to keep it simple just to show you how a very basic refrigeration system works. Now let's see this. Start with the compressor where you see that motion part. Do you see the piston? What the piston does actually? It takes air from the lower side and push air into discharge. It's inappropriate to see air, I do apologize. It takes refrigerant from the suction line and it pushes that refrigerant into the discharge line. Now we will see the red arrow. That's very hot gas. It will burn your hand. It's superheated, very hot gas. So what happened further? If you see this refrigerant move through the system and it will reach the condenser. What happened into the condenser? The condenser will cool the refrigerant, and we all know if you have a constant pressure but you will drop the temperature, you will liquefy a liquid. In our case is the refrigerant. Now the refrigerant, it's getting out from the condenser in liquid state, passes by the energy storage device, goes through the dehydrator filter to the dryer, and then passes by a slide glass where you will see if the refrigerant is bubbling a little bit. Also the slide glass, it is equipped with a little ring with a special substance which tells you if you have moisture into the refrigerant. That little green circle in between the text valves and the energy storage device, it's pulsing a little bit. That will change the color if the refrigerant will be wet. So the refrigerant passes by through the text valve. The text valve is a thermostatic expansion valve, and when it passes by, a smaller quantity of refrigerant will pass by, and there is the point where the high pressure drops into the low pressure, allowing the refrigerant to vaporize. Through vaporization, the refrigerant need energy, and you will suck energy, cooling the evaporator. So while the refrigerant is vaporizing, it will suck the energy, cooling the evaporator. Now the fan will circulate air through the very cold evaporator, and when the air passes by, you will lose the temperature, but also it will lose the humidity. I don't want to talk about, I have other videos which talks about the humidity, and especially in air conditioning systems. So now the refrigerant on the vapors, when the refrigerant finishes the duty of cooling, goes into the suction line as vapors, and it should reach the compressor as superheated vapors. Now you will see we have a liquid separator. If you do not have enough superheat, small particle of a refrigerant in a liquid form can go into the compressor. And can you imagine, if you will see on the top of the compressor where the piston is moving, if you have gas, you can compress the gas, but if you have liquid, you will blow up the valves. So that liquid separator, it is meant to allow the liquid to fall to the bottom of the liquid separator, and the suction from the compressor will suck only vapors. That's a very important feature if you run system with very low temperature or you cannot control the superheat properly. On the left hand side you will have an oil return. Not all the systems have oil return, but that is quite good stuff for big systems because you don't want to remain in the compressor without oil. So while you push the very hot vapors of refrigerant, the oil will drop to the bottom of oil separator, and the oil return pipe will allow the oil to go back into this compressor crankcase. I didn't make a very clear picture about the oil return, but the oil return otherwise can have an automatic valve, or it's got like a floating switch. You cannot have open all the time the communication in between the oil return pipe and the compressor, because as you will see, the very hot and very high pressure gas goes into that oil return, and if you have a constant communication between the oil return and the compressor crankcase, the discharge with the hot gas will go straight in the compressor crankcase on a lower section, and that's not a good deal. This is it. It is not a very complicated system. So when you start the system, the refrigerant goes from the compressor straight into the oil return. The oil will be separated. Then the refrigerant will continue its journey into the condenser, where it will be cooled and liquefied. And then you will pass by the energy storage device, go to the takes valve, goes to the evaporator, where it will charge itself with energy and will return as a superheated vapors in the compressor crankcase. This is what it is. Now you can see a little bit better, no movement parts. So what do we have here? Let's start again. We have the compressor. The compressor has suction and discharge. Discharge is very hot, it will burn you. The suction are superheated vapors. So the refrigerant leaves the compressor through the high side, and it goes into the oil return. Then the refrigerant will lose the oil. The oil droplets will fall to the bottom. Then it could be a floating switch or a special sensor which will open a solenoid with a valve. Now when the oil will be drained, then that valve will close. You do not want like 20 bars to go back into the 5 bars into the compressor's crankcase. Imagine your oil will fly all over the place, and this is not a very good stuff. Plus you will equalize the pressure. Now the refrigerant on a very hot superheated vapors, I mean they are superheated, they very hot, and the pressure it's quite big. Like let's put as an example 20 bars. Now you have a constant pressure in between the compressor's discharge and takes valve. So because we have a constant pressure, we need to liquefy the refrigerant. How can we do this? Well, we have the condenser fan motors to do that. So, and the condenser will allow the refrigerant to pass by, and the fan will suck air through the condenser fins, allowing the refrigerant to cool down. We have to cool the refrigerant. So we cool in the refrigerant until we reach the subcooling. With the appropriate subcooling, we have a perfect refrigeration process. Now the refrigerant will continue its journey. It will pass by the energy storage, then you'll get through the dryer, and you will lose all its impurity or small molecules of water. I mean, you will lose the moisture, and then you will go to the side glass. The side glass is there so you can see if the refrigerant is bubbling. It's not a perfect way to check the charge, but the side glass have another property. On each ring is got a kind of special gasket with a substance. If the refrigerant is moist, you will change its color, and you know that your filter dryer might have to be changed, or your refrigerant quality is not good. After side glass, the refrigerant will go to the takes valve. That's the point where the high pressure section to the low pressure section is divided. The refrigerant will pass by the takes valve, but in a small quantity, like an injection. And because the pressure is very low into the evaporator, the refrigerant starts to vaporize. That vaporization process absorb energy, because you have to understand, you never cool the place, you only steal the heat. You steal the heat. You cannot use a torch in a light to create dark. You have like a shadow a little bit because the light can. But anyway, I'm not going to go there. So you take the heat, you absorb the heat, and you leave cool. So the refrigerant gets very cold, and The refrigerant fan, which moves the air through the evaporator, it's just allowing the air to lose the energy, so the air will become very cold. Then the refrigerant finishes duty and it goes into the suction line. In the suction line, we have to see the superheat. We don't want droplets of refrigerant to reach the compressor, to brush the oil, or to destroy the piston. And if we cannot control the superheat very well, in some cases we have to use a liquid separator. The liquid separator allows the small droplets of refrigerant to sit at the bottom, and it will only suck the vapors. And this is about the refrigeration system. I will make another video, and then I'm going to use a little bit of numbers here and there, so you'll understand better about subcooling, superheat, etc. So there are some other aspects of refrigeration in big markets. You know, these open fridges, big ones, where you can buy fruits and some other stuff. Because they open, we really have to consider the ventilation into these big stores, because if you have an inappropriate ventilation, you might have the bad surprise of displacing the cold air from the fridges, replacing that air with the warm air, and your refrigeration system will be constantly overloaded, and you might even affect the product. It happened in some cases to me that some heating blowers above the doors have been badly orientated straight toward the fridge, and the ice cream was melting, some product has been destroyed, and people always used to put on us all this trouble, calling us over and over again, speaking to us about refrigeration equipment not being performant, and then we use some airflow devices like comfort probes and so on, and we did some analysis to the air motion to the store to find out the quantity of the air that was displaced from the fridge. And for this we used a thermo-infrared camera or multiple data loggers, and we checked how the temperature and the air motion affect the fridge. This is about the refrigeration at the moment. That was an extremely simple refrigeration reciprocating compressor. We can talk about high technology, but I think this is not very necessary. If you want to become a good refrigeration engineer, there's some specialty courses so you can take your own direction in life. However, what can I say? Thank you for watching this video, and I wish you the best of the best.